Because I know that simple minds view censorship as an acceptable form of argument, I'm citing fair use section 107 of the Copyright Act, that's Title 17 U.S. Code, specifically the comment and criticism clause. This video is going to be exposing the lies and dishonesty that's present in the Way of the Master teaching in regard to evolution. Now, Way of the Master is made by two of the finest 15th century minds, Kirk Cameron and Ray Comfort. Yes, the same Ray Comfort that's responsible for the atheist nightmare banana fiasco. The vast majority of their arguments are just laughable from a number of different standpoints, and I'll be pointing those out. I actually kind of got attracted to do this video because one of the people that I've been dealing with lately who is an absolutely insane creation is Lawrence Brink. You may have from this picture. This is exactly how he got started on evolution, and I've seen a couple people, just absolutely mindless fundamentalists, who have all been brainwashed by this, so I figured I'd go ahead and debunk it.
We're now going to look closely at some of the believers of the theory of evolution, and we want you to listen very closely to the type of language they use. True believers use what we call the language of speculation. They'll start off sounding like an expert, but because there's such a lack of factual evidence for the theory, they are forced to use words like we surmise, we believe, perhaps, maybe, could have, and possibly. And then they'll end up saying things like, well, I really don't know, I'm not an expert. So watch for these phrases and for these words.
Actually, that's also known as the language of science. In science, nothing is 100% proven. We're not 100% sure that there are cells, that there are atoms, that there's gravity, or really anything. I mean, of course, it's been all proven beyond reasonable doubt, but nothing is 100%. As such, we use qualifiers, such as maybe, perhaps, probably. I mean, that's simply how scientists talk. I mean, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that, and it prevents you from making false statements, period, regardless of the veracity or the amount of evidence that's for them. Also, pay particular attention to the last thing that he said about the I'm not an expert, as it's going to become very apparent and somewhat comical here in a minute why people are saying that. This next clip is Comfort going around interviewing random college students about evolution.
When they came out, what came out of the ocean?
I don't know. You tell me.
Did you think we were originally fish?
I mean, it's possible.
Did it come out as a dog?
Probably not.
What was
Probably didn't come out as a mammal at all. Probably came out as a reptile and evolved that way.
it? So you think we lived under the water?
It's possible at some point.
When we were under the water, do you think we had lungs or gills? Because I'm trying to think, here is this sort of animal who's coming out of the ocean without lungs. So he comes out with gills, goes, runs back to water and just keeps coming out until lungs develop?
Yeah.
Wow. Now, this animal that came out
Wow.
was in the sea, so obviously...
And this continues on for another painful minute, that is of Comfort going and randomly interviewing college students. Now, the amazing thing about this is simply how dishonest it is. What Comfort is trying to portray is that the people who are supporting evolution don't... they don't know anything about it. And they use this language because they're really kind of clueless, and he's just stumped the evolutionists. Well, you're going around asking random college students. Seriously? I mean, that's utterly dishonest. Why don't you ask a scientist or anyone like that? Why do you have to go and ask random college students who probably don't know anything about it to try and prove your point? And keep in mind, those are the ones that he edited who actually couldn't answer his questions. I'm sure there were plenty who could that they simply didn't air. I mean, this is amazingly dishonest simply because they're meaning to make it appear as if we don't have answers to these things.
They'll end up saying things like, well, I really don't know, I'm not an expert, so what...
Geez, I wonder why they're saying that. Oh, and to basically answer his question about coming out on land, it was the arthropods who were on land first. And did they have gills or lungs? They actually had neither, because they have thin membranes, which basically allow for gas exchange via diffusion. This is actually what limited their size, which is why in the past, the oxygen content in the atmosphere was roughly 30%, which is much higher than the 20% that it is now, and we were able to see giant arthropods, such as Brontosaurus and things like that, measuring several meters long, as opposed to the very small size that they're restricted to today. So, as you can see, it's the percentage of oxygen in the atmosphere that limits their size, and they don't have lungs or gills. Now, moving on to fish, however, To answer his question about did they just kind of flop around or run back and take breaths and things like that, perhaps if he would take a minute to actually look at nature before producing an ignorant video, he would find his answer. There are several animals and fishes which are amphibious and can leave the water and hang out on land for a little bit of time. Take a look at mud skippers, take a look at lungfish, and plenty of things like that. The answer to his question is in nature all around us. But then again, of course, random college students that he was interviewing probably wouldn't be able to give that answer.
Now, the big problem evolutionists have is that they're finding a huge gap in the fossil record. In other words, when archaeologists dig up the bones of these dead animals, they don't find these transitional forms that help one animal transform into another animal.
Now, the problem with this statement is that it's just wrong. There are thousands of transitional forms. In fact, I did a video, I've done a series of videos on transitional forms. Check them out, they're in my channel on the playlist. We've got them basically from just about any transition. And they're well documented and they fully fulfill the predictions of evolution. Thus, not only the transitional forms themselves are supporting evolution, but it also provides a nice way for evolution to be tested. Again, take a look at my whale transitional fossils or anything like that. The fossil record completely supports evolution. So his comment is completely false. And ignorance of them does not mean that they don't exist.
And if you don't have those bones, you can't prove evolution ever happened.
Well, by that logic, if we do have the bones, then I guess that means that we can prove that evolution has happened. Thanks, Kirk.
For instance, the amazing discovery of Lucy. But now, nearly all experts agree that Lucy was just the skeleton of a 3-foot-tall chimpanzee.
Actually, no, Lucy isn't a chimpanzee, and experts don't think that. There are many features of Lucy which are completely transitional. For example, she has a valgus knee, which meant that she moved upright. Second of all, if you take a look at the ratio of the length of her humerus to the femur, it's 84.6 compared to 71.8 for modern humans and 97.8 for common chimpanzees. This basically means that either the arms are beginning to shorten or the legs are beginning to lengthen. Either that or they were occurring simultaneously, but regardless, it's completely in between the two. Also, you can take a look at her pelvic girdle and that her pubic arch was 90 degrees, which is similar to modern human females and completely unlike chimpanzees. And these are just a few of the dozens of diagnostic characteristics which put Lucy, or Australopithecus afarensis, in between humans and chimpanzees. Experts don't conclude that she was a chimpanzee. Kirk Cameron is simply lying.
Or Nebraska Man. They created an entire skeleton with arms, legs, feet, hands, even facial features, when all they really had was one tooth, which later was found to be the tooth of an extinct pig.
Nebraska Man was never widely considered to be a transitional form. This is actually a perfect example of the scientific method working through continued scrutiny and criticism, in that it was found out to be the tooth of an extinct pig, and science corrected it and moved on.
Or Piltdown Man. The jawbone turned out to belong to a modern ape.
Yes, there was a fraud 100 years ago. I bet that means that everything found since is false.
And of course, Neanderthal Man, whose famous skeleton found in France over 50 years ago was that of an old man who suffered from arthritis.
That's funny. Since when does arthritis cause an increase in bone density and your brow bone to become enormous? No one believes that it was an old man who had arthritis except for creationists who are deluded and won't take a look at the facts. This was clearly not a human being. Furthermore, there are several Neanderthal specimens, which Cameron completely ignores, and he also completely ignores the fact that we have sequenced their mitochondrial DNA and nuclear DNA as of this point, and it is confirmed that they were definitively not human. Once again, Cameron is too ignorant of the facts to be making a video about it, or he's simply lying. In addition to Kirk Cameron completely lying about 2 of the fossils, he also ignored a good dozen or so. We have more than just 4 transitional fossils between apes and humans. However, there are quite a few transitional fossils that Kirk Cameron completely left out, such as Ardipithecus ramidus, Australopithecus anamensis, Australopithecus afarensis, Australopithecus africanus, Australopithecus gari, Australopithecus ethiopicus, Australopithecus robustus, Australopithecus boisei, Homo habilis, Homo gregoricus, Homo erectus, Homo ergaster, Homo ancestor, Homo heidelbergensis, Homo neanderthalis, Homo florenziensis, and Homo sapiens. Well, Kirk completely left those little gems out.